Wow. So there's so much to delve into, and I'm delighted that Camilla is here with us. Enough from me. We've got her to tell us about the extraordinary things that she describes so fantastically in this book. She leads the Mental Health Neuroscience Lab at the University of Cambridge. Her work has been featured in The New Statesman. She's been on Sky News and on BBC Radio 4's The Naked Scientist. I think I'm right in thinking this is your first book, isn't it?
That's correct.
Her first book. I very much hope not the last, although there is certainly enough to be getting on with in this one for now. So Camilla, thank you so much for joining us.
It's so great to be here, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to discuss the balanced brain with you.
Well, let's talk about the balanced brain part first, because I think there are a lot of things. I don't know how your process went in choosing your title, but there are a lot of things you could have called this book. And I wonder why you chose that. Explain the concept, the balanced brain, as the title.
It was quite a deliberate choice because my book is not about mental illness. My book is about the experience of having mental health, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And the fact that for all of us, our experience of mental health is created via these ongoing processes, which I describe as kind of like homeostasis in the body. These processes trying to restore balance in different senses, whether that's to do with learning what's good or bad in the world, or what's painful, what's pleasurable. It's this kind of series of coupled processes that can sometimes go awry, leading to poor mental health, but equally, in many cases, through a variety of treatments and interventions, lead to better mental health.
Okay, so I mean, there are a lot of books, and that's a good thing, on this subject, broadly speaking. This to me felt very different. I think you challenge quite a lot of things, a lot of narratives that are perhaps ingrained. And I wonder if that was a conscious attempt from you to sort of do something different and perhaps react against certain things.
Well, I'm glad so many people are talking about mental health. It's a critical topic. Everyone you know, either they or someone they're close to, has experienced a mental health condition. So it really is a kind of vital topic. But I think previous discussions have sometimes been led astray in different ways. And perhaps the biggest way, in the way that my book is really fighting against, is the idea that there is a single silver bullet that will help anyone's mental health, whether that's a new drug or other kind of more biological treatment, or whether that's even something seemingly innocuous like exercise or a probiotic diet. It's my conviction that there will never be a single solution for mental health because of the complexity of mental health and mental health problems. And I go through in my book, I really try to dive deep into the biology that leads to our experience of well-being, of feeling less well, and how each of these different routes can be targeted by different treatments that may be successful in different people.
That's the point that comes up all the way through, that there is absolutely no one size fits all, that everybody is different. But then writing this book, who were you writing for, in a sense? Was that to anyone? Is this book for anyone, whether you think you're suffering with mental health issues or whether you're not? Is this something that you feel everyone should read?
I think everyone who's ever thought about their own mental health, which must be most people, probably should know the message that there isn't a kind of individual solution. It's not just people with mental health conditions who want to improve their mental health. It really is most people. And so I think for each of us, an understanding of the kind of exciting prospective things that could help our mental health, but also a kind of below that superficial understanding, a deeper understanding of why it might or might not work for you, is what I hoped would come out of this book. I hope as well that it kind of gives people, perhaps people who've tried something in the past and it hasn't worked for them, and that's really challenging.
Yeah.
I hope that this book broadens their perspective about what might be possible, and the fact that, one thing not working doesn't mean another thing won't work necessarily.
And I think it absolutely does that. And you've packed so much in terms of possible treatments, possible ways forward. And I certainly want to come to that in a moment. But the where you begin is with natural highs, pleasure, pain, and the brain, and the extraordinary power of the brain and the mind, which comes out all the way through the book. Here you talk about chronic pain, and you say that all pain and chronic pain can be, and particularly important in inverted commas, all in your head. Like, people might read that straight away and go, how dare she? How dare she say that my pain that I feel so strongly and physically could be all in my head? So I wonder if you could explain that, but also, perhaps most importantly, how knowing that can help, or can it?
Maybe it's a little bit surprising to start a book about mental health with chronic pain. Many people don't even think of chronic pain as a mental health condition. But in fact, I've chosen pain as the first example that I really dive deep into, because I think it disrupts your expectations about what is physical and what is mental, what is biological and what is psychological. These artificial divisions that I really try to break in writing my book. I know that the experience of pain is body-based. So I'm someone who's experienced chronic pain. Almost everyone has experienced some type of pain, but that doesn't mean that that's the reality. In fact, all of our pain is filtered through mechanisms in our brain, but in particular, chronic pain can in some cases even be largely driven by things going on in the brain, even if where you feel it is on the periphery, in your hand, in your foot. It might be centrally driven. Even when it's not, it's often augmented, it can be enhanced, it can be suppressed by processes that are happening in your brain. You know this because this is very important. If you want to survive and something painful happens to you, you need to be able to keep going to escape a predator. So your brain is able to override those painful signals. That's great, but it can also enhance them.
And so, how do you think it can help? I mean, in one sense, it really helps just knowing that, I think, for lots of people. It might not help others, but how do you think it can help people knowing the strength of the brain when it comes to pain?
Well, I hope it helps kind of multiple camps of people. The first is sort of from an experiential perspective. I think it can be extremely useful to know that some of your pain might originate from processes you think of as all in your mind. Of course, I don't really think anything is all in the mind. I think it's in the brain.
Yeah.
But then a second thing that I hope happens from this is that maybe it will diversify what treatments someone seeks when they experience chronic pain. For some people, not everyone, chronic pain can be very successfully treated with psychological therapy. That doesn't mean that it's not real. That just means it's another route, a really interesting and exciting route via the brain that can reduce chronic pain.
And it also works the other way around, in the sense that something that you might think of as being psychological in the mind can be actually treated by something that you would think of as being a physical treatment.
Yes, exactly. So I think the other way around can occur sometimes when people have experienced, say, a trauma or something clearly kind of social or situational, and they think, well, how could this possibly be treated with something as, dull and biological as a drug, or something as kind of generic as exercise? But in fact, there's two examples of physical treatments that can be extremely effective for mental distress, for different reasons.
Mm. Oh, it's fascinating. And that is, you come to that later in the book. Also, you talk in this chapter about, as I was saying, natural highs, pleasure, pain in the brain. Something that I found really interesting is just the importance, and it may seem simple, but it's so important to remind us scientifically, how you do, of pleasure. And I thought the sort of advantages you talk about of being a little bit of a hedonist, or hedonist, and also the idea that austerity isn't the only route, because I think we are, and perhaps some people might be more inclined to take this on than others, but we are often sort of told that the things we should do to improve our mental health aren't things that necessarily bring us or everyone that much pleasure. So it might be, don't eat this, don't do that, get up every morning at 5 and run around the block. And I thought that the message I got from that chapter, as someone who might be inclined to do those things or be stricter, is that don't forget, you were saying to us, how important those small pleasures are for mental health. And I wonder if you feel like society sometimes forgets that.
Yes, I do. I think people give themselves a really hard time, which can be such a vicious cycle when it comes to mental health. People start to blame themselves for their own poor mental health. They think, oh, if only I was someone who did X, Y, or Z, I would feel better. Or I've been pushing myself so hard. I've been eating this and making sure I'm in bed at a certain time and making sure I wake up at a certain time. And yet I still don't feel any better. And I think my book hopefully takes the blame away. I think there are many processes that can support good mental health, and it doesn't have to come from a place of depriving yourself. It doesn't have to come from a place of austerity, as you say. I think it can and often does come from a place of joy.
Austerity was your words. I was quoting you. But I suppose, and you question this yourself, you can't tell someone who is suffering from serious mental health problems, add more pleasure, have some chocolate, smell the flowers, because that will feel offensive to many people because it won't help.
Yeah, not only is it offensive, it's also, totally counterproductive, because in many mental health conditions, and depression is one of them, a very common symptom is a lack of pleasure, a lack of anticipating pleasurable things, a lack of desire for pleasurable activities, things like eating or socializing with friends that used to be really enjoyable, to many people with depression are no longer enjoyable.